The red sun burned mercilessly above the endless desert. Waves of heat shimmered across the sand, making the horizon seem like it floated. Lyra staggered through the dunes, her mouth dry, throat raw, and skin blistered by the harsh sunlight. Every step was a struggle, but she forced herself onward. She could not stop, not now. Only hours ago she had been traveling with Kale, her alien husband. Kyle was tall, with smooth gray skin, eyes like silver mirrors, and a calm, distant voice. He had been charming and brilliant at first, winning her trust with his knowledge of distant worlds. But that trust had shattered today. They had been on a mission to explore a newly discovered desert planet, one that shimmered with red sands and strange violet crystals. Kale had insisted on leading, claiming he knew the safest routes and the best spots for resources. Lyra, though wary, had followed. She had trusted him, believing that he cared for her. Then came the ambush. Lyra remembered the sound first, the low hum of machinery hidden beneath the sand. Kale's eyes had gleamed with something she did not recognize. "Go ahead," he had said, almost gently. "I'll handle it." Lyra had followed his instructions, moving to scout ahead. When she turned back, Kyle was gone. The desert was empty. She screamed his name, but only the wind answered. He had left her. At first she could not believe it. He had risked nothing to save her. He had abandoned her to die. Anger surged through her, hot and sharp. But panic followed quickly. She was alone. The desert was merciless. Without water, food, or shelter, she had only hours before the sun would take her strength completely. Lyra dropped to her knees, gasping. She forced herself to think. Panicking would not save her. She had studied alien worlds for years. She had survived in harsh terrains before. She could survive this too. Her first step was water. There had to be some signs of life, some hint of moisture hidden among the dunes. Using her tools, she scanned the sands, reading patterns that would be invisible to most. Her eyes fell on small, pale mounds, tiny burrows. Desert creatures must hide there to escape the heat. And if creatures survived here, perhaps water was nearby. With slow, careful movements, she followed the tracks of the smallest creatures. Each step drained her energy, but she ignored the pain. Hours passed, and the sun sank lower. The desert shifted colors, and the wind began to howl. Sandstorms were coming. She needed shelter. A shadow caught her eye. She looked up to see a jagged rock formation rising from the dunes. It was not much, but it would block the wind. Crawling toward it, she shielded her face, letting the storm pass over. When the sand stopped swirling, she dug into a small crevice between two rocks. There, Lyra allowed herself a moment to rest. She pressed her forehead against the cool stone, feeling relief for the first time since Kale had left. Anger mixed with fear, but also determination. She would not die here. Not because of him. Night came quickly in the desert, and with it a cold that bit through her thin clothing. Lyra used her small survival kit to light a fire. The flames flickered against the rocks, casting shadows that danced across her face. She cooked some dried rations she had carried, her thoughts turning inward. Kyle had betrayed her, but she would not let his cruelty define her. She had always believed humans were resourceful, clever, and resilient. She had faced challenges before, and she could face this. She would survive. She would grow stronger, and she would make sure Kale could never harm her again. The first night passed slowly, each hour stretching longer than the last. Lyra stayed alert, listening to the sounds of the desert. Strange creatures moved in the darkness, some small and harmless, others larger and more dangerous. She recognized the signs of predatory animals, keeping a wide berth around their tracks. Her training as a xenobiologist combined with instinct kept her safe. By morning, Lyra had mapped out her surroundings. The desert seemed endless, but she spotted faint signs of movement in the distance. Perhaps other travelers, perhaps a settlement. She packed her small kit, extinguished the fire, and set off toward the faint trail. The journey was exhausting. Her muscles ached, her skin burned, and every step was a struggle. The desert seemed to mock her determination, shifting dunes swallowing her tracks as if trying to erase her existence. But Lyra pressed on, driven by more than survival, by justice, and a desire to prove that she was stronger than Kale had imagined. As the sun climbed higher, she spotted something glinting in the distance. A metal structure partially buried in sand. Could it be a shelter? A remnant of an old human expedition? She ran toward it, stumbling and falling, but refusing to give up. The structure turned out to be part of an old research station, abandoned but intact. Lyra found water stored in sealed containers, food rations that were still edible, and basic tools. She drank and ate, feeling her strength return. This small victory fueled her spirit. She was not just surviving, she was planning. While exploring the station, Lyra discovered old logs detailing the history of this desert planet. Humans had attempted to study it decades ago, but the harsh conditions had forced them to leave. She realized that if humans could endure here once, she could endure here now. More than that, she could thrive. Lyra spent several days in the abandoned station repairing its communication system. She sent a message to the nearest human colony, explaining her situation and requesting rescue. The message was brief but firm. She would survive, but she needed allies. Humans understood the value of cooperation, of ingenuity. She trusted they would respond. At night, Lyra trained herself in combat techniques using the limited space of the station. She practiced moves to defend herself against both alien creatures and potential threats. Every action honed her body and mind, preparing her for the day she would face Kale again. Each passing day strengthened her resolve. She remembered Kale's betrayal, but she also remembered the knowledge she had gained, the skills she had mastered, and the hope she carried for human kindness. The desert had tried to break her, but she refused. It had made her sharper, smarter, and more determined. Finally, a small human shuttle arrived, its engines cutting through the quiet desert morning. Lyra ran toward it, waving frantically. Joran, the pilot, landed carefully, helping her aboard. For the first time in days, she felt warmth not from the sun, but from human kindness. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyra looked down at the red sands stretching endlessly below. She had survived Kale's betrayal. She had survived the desert. And now, with humans by her side, she would turn survival into strength. Her mind raced with thoughts of the future. She would marry kindness, embrace human ingenuity, and one day Kale would face the consequences of his cruelty. But for now, she allowed herself a small smile. She had survived. And survival, she knew, was only the beginning. Lyra sat on the small shuttle seat, her body still stiff from the desert journey. Outside, the barren red sands stretched endlessly, fading into the distance. But inside, warmth surrounded her. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily and a soft light illuminated the cabin. For the first time in days, she felt safe. The pilot, Joran, glanced at her with a gentle smile. "You're lucky we found you," he said. His voice was calm, steady, and comforting, so different from Kale's cold, distant tone. Lyra nodded, unsure if she had the strength to speak. Joran noticed her hesitation. "You don't need to talk yet. Just rest." Lyra's eyes drifted to the controls and the small display screens. She had spent her life studying alien planets, understanding ecosystems and analyzing terrain. Seeing the shuttle's systems and the careful way Joran handled it filled her with a sense of hope. Humans were inventive, practical, and strong in ways Kale had never understood. The shuttle soon reached a settlement on the edge of the desert. Unlike the Xerian cities she had glimpsed in her studies, cold, mechanical, and imposing, this human settlement felt alive. Small buildings clustered together, connected by dusted roads with gardens growing in the sand. Children ran freely, laughing. Workers repaired machines, traded goods, and greeted each other warmly. Life thrived here, even in such a harsh environment. Joran led her to a modest dwelling. It was simple but clean and safe. Lyra sank into the cushions, letting exhaustion wash over her. She closed her eyes, and memories of Kale's betrayal surfaced. She shivered but forced herself to breathe slowly. She could not change the past. What mattered now was the present and the humans around her. Over the next few days, Joran cared for Lyra patiently. He provided food and water, taught her how to move safely around the settlement, and even showed her the community's water reclamation system. Lyra was amazed. Humans had turned the desert into a place of life through intelligence, teamwork, and patience. She felt a growing respect for them. One evening, Joran invited her to the communal center. Families gathered around a fire, sharing meals and stories. Lyra listened quietly, absorbing the warmth and camaraderie. She realized that humans had something the Xerians did not: compassion. They valued each other, and even strangers were welcomed. "Lyra," Joran said softly, noticing her gaze on the group. "You're welcome here. You can stay as long as you need." Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. "Thank you," she whispered. It was a simple phrase, but it carried deep meaning. She had been abandoned by one who should have cared, but now she felt the genuine kindness of others. As days passed, Lyra began to regain her strength. She explored the... Lyra woke to the soft light of dawn spilling across the desert settlement. The red sands glowed faintly in the morning sun, and a cool breeze swept across the settlement, carrying the scent of dry earth and blooming desert flowers. She stretched, feeling stronger than she had in weeks. Survival had become routine, but now she hungered for more: knowledge, skill, and a plan. She had learned much since arriving. Humans had not only saved her life, but had shown her the power of ingenuity, teamwork, and courage. She could survive in the desert alone, yes, but survival was not enough. Kale's betrayal was still a wound that burned in her heart. He had underestimated her, underestimated humans. She would ensure he would never make that mistake again. Joren approached, carrying a small tray of breakfast. "You're up early," he said with a smile. "Planning your next adventure?" Lyra accepted the tray, nodding. "I'm thinking about preparation. I need to understand the desert, the Xerians, and our strengths. If Kale or his patrols return, we must be ready, not just to defend, but to take the initiative." Joren raised an eyebrow. "You're already thinking about fighting them?" Lyra's gaze hardened, but it was not fueled by blind anger. Not fighting for revenge alone. Fighting for justice. For these people. For the desert. For everyone Kale thinks he can control. After breakfast, Lyra began her routine. She trained with Joren, practicing hand-to-hand defense and learning the use of small human-designed weapons. Each move was precise and calculated. She combined her agility, speed, and knowledge of alien combat techniques with human strategies. Slowly, she became a force to be reckoned with. Not just a survivor, but a strategist. The humans of the settlement noticed her determination. Scouts, engineers, and even children watched her train with curiosity and admiration. She spoke with each of them, learning their methods and teaching them in return. Her knowledge of alien life forms proved invaluable. She could predict movements of desert creatures and even anticipate patrol patterns from Xerian forces. One afternoon, Lyra climbed a rocky outcrop overlooking the desert. The horizon was endless, a sea of red and orange, broken only by jagged rock formations. She traced paths across the sand, imagining patrol routes and supply lines. Somewhere out there, Kale moved freely, confident in his superiority. Lyra's heart tightened. He would not remain free for long. Back in the settlement, she called a meeting with Joren and several other trusted allies. They gathered around a table scattered with maps, devices, and notes. Lyra pointed to the desert expanses marked on the maps. "Kyle's people are organized but not invincible," she explained. "They rely on fear and power, but humans have strategy, innovation, and cooperation. If we learn their weaknesses, we can protect our home and ensure justice is served." A young scout spoke up. "But how can we face them? They have advanced technology and numbers." Lyra smiled. "We use what they do not understand. The desert itself, our teamwork, and our creativity. They underestimate us because they think humans are weak. We will prove them wrong." For the next few days, Lyra devoted herself to research. She studied the desert climate, noting wind patterns, sandstorms, and hidden oases. She tracked the movement of alien patrols, using observations and reports from scouts. Every piece of information became part of a larger strategy. She also built relationships with the people of the settlement. She listened to their stories, shared her own, and taught children about resilience, science, and the importance of knowledge. She realized that human strength was more than combat. It was compassion, intelligence, and the ability to inspire others. One evening, while walking with Joren through the settlement's gardens, she spoke quietly. "I used to think strength meant power, weapons, dominance. Kale made me believe that. But humans, you've shown me another kind of strength, one that grows from care, planning, and unity. That is the strength we will use." Joren nodded. "And it's why you belong here, Lyra. Not just as someone we saved, but as a partner, a leader, and a guide." Lyra's eyes softened. She felt a warmth she had not known with Kale, the feeling of belonging, of shared purpose. But she did not forget her goal. Belonging would not weaken her. It would empower her. With these humans, she could achieve what she could not alone. Lyra's preparation extended beyond physical training. She practiced negotiation, learning to communicate with allies and potential foes alike. She analyzed the psychology of the Xerians, understanding their pride, hierarchy, and arrogance. Knowledge, she realized, was as powerful as any weapon. Then came the first test. A Xerian scout patrol appeared on the horizon, moving through the dunes, unaware of the settlement below. Lyra's heart pounded, not with fear, but with focus. She instructed the human scouts to remain hidden while she observed the patrol's formation. Hours passed as she studied their patterns, noting timing, speed, and weaknesses. When the patrol approached a vulnerable supply line, she signaled to the settlement's engineers to create a distraction. A small explosion of sand and noise misled the patrol, forcing them to retreat without engaging. Joren clapped her on the shoulder. "Not bad for a few weeks of training," Lyra smiled faintly. "This is only the beginning. Kale's forces are stronger, but they are predictable. With knowledge and planning, humans can outsmart them at every turn." The successful encounter boosted morale in the settlement. Humans saw that even against advanced alien forces, strategy and unity could prevail. Lyra felt a growing confidence, hers and theirs. Every day she honed her skills, expanding plans for defense, intelligence, and eventual offense if needed. One night Lyra sat alone under the stars, thinking of Kale. She remembered the desert, the abandonment and the rage that had burned inside her, but she also remembered the humans who had saved her, taught her and shown her another way to be strong. Her anger transformed into focus. She did not want mindless revenge, she wanted justice, ensured by human ingenuity and ethics. She traced constellations in the sky, imagining paths across the desert, potential ambushes, and strategies for outmaneuvering Xerians. Every idea strengthened her resolve. She had been betrayed, abandoned, and left to perish. But now she had allies, knowledge, and a plan. Kale had underestimated her once. He would not make that mistake again. As dawn approached, Lyra rose, feeling the energy of purpose flowing through her. She would train, strategize, and lead. She would protect the humans who had welcomed her, honor the skills she had developed, and ensure that Kale and his people could no longer exploit the desert or its inhabitants. And so, Lyra's ambition grew. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a strategist, a guide, and a future leader. With humans by her side, she would turn betrayal into strength, weakness into opportunity, and desert hardship into the foundation of triumph. The desert, once a symbol of abandonment and cruelty, had become a proving ground. Lyra had learned to endure, to adapt, and to plan, and soon she would use all she had learned to face Kale. Not with blind anger, but with human ingenuity, courage, and unity. She looked out over the dunes, feeling the power of knowledge, training, and human spirit. The desert no longer intimidated her. It challenged her, and she was ready. Lyra smiled, a quiet, determined smile. The future was hers to shape. With her human allies, she would rise stronger than ever. And Kale, he would finally understand the true power of humans. The desert settlement was alive with quiet energy. Humans worked together in the heat of the day, building, repairing, and training. Lyra stood at the center of it all, maps spread across a table, her eyes sharp and focused. Weeks of preparation had led to this moment. Kale's patrols had grown bolder, venturing closer to human lands, taking resources and leaving destruction in their path. It was time to act. She traced her finger across the map, stopping at a canyon marked with red ink. "This is where Kale's supply routes pass," she said to the gathered humans. "They use this path because it is narrow and faster, but it also makes them vulnerable. If we strike there, we can weaken their hold on the desert." Joren leaned closer, his expression thoughtful. "It's dangerous. The Xerians won't expect humans to attack directly, but if we're caught..." Lyra shook her head firmly. "We won't be caught. We won't fight like they do. We'll use their pride against them." The room grew silent, but one by one heads nodded. The humans trusted her. They had seen her intelligence, her determination, and her ability to turn survival into strategy. That night, Lyra and her team set out. The desert stretched before them, lit by pale moonlight. Shadows shifted across the dunes, and the wind whispered secrets through the rocks. Every step was careful, deliberate. Lyra led the way, her senses alert. They reached the canyon before dawn. The walls rose steeply on either side, casting long shadows over the sand below. Lyra crouched, motioning for silence. Soon the hum of engines echoed through the canyon. Xerian transports approached, their sleek black vehicles gliding over the sand. Lyra's heart beat faster, but her mind remained calm. She signaled to the humans, who quickly set their traps. Simple, clever devices, wires, nets, and hidden explosives waited in the sand. Not powerful enough to destroy, but enough to confuse and disable. The first transport rolled into the trap. With a sharp crack, the wires snapped tight, pulling the vehicle sideways. Sand exploded into the air as humans triggered their devices. The Xyrians shouted in confusion, scrambling to regain control. Lyra gay. The desert wind howled like a warning. Sand danced across the dunes in restless waves. Lyra stood at the edge of the human settlement, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She knew Kale was coming. The raids, the sabotage, the victories, they had all led to this. Kale would not sit back any longer. His pride demanded he face her directly. Scouts returned at dawn, their faces pale with worry. Kale's army is moving, one reported. Dozens of transports, war machines, and soldiers. They are marching straight toward us, the humans murmured with fear. They had fought skirmishes, ambushes, and clever battles, but a full-scale attack was different. The Xyrians were stronger, better armed, and more ruthless. Lyra raised her hand, silencing the crowd. Her voice was calm, steady. We knew this would come. Kale believes power is about numbers and weapons, but we know better. We have unity, courage, and the desert itself. This is our home, not his, and we will not surrender. The words lit a fire in the humans' hearts. Fear did not vanish, but it was joined by determination. They prepared quickly, gathering weapons, setting traps, and fortifying their walls. Joran stood at Lyra's side, worry in his eyes. He's bringing everything he has. If we lose, Lyra touched his arm gently. We won't lose. Not if we fight smart. Kale expects fear. He expects weakness. We will give him neither. The first wave came at sunset. Xyrian machines roared across the sand, firing bursts of energy. The settlement shook under the assault. But the humans were ready. Traps exploded, disabling vehicles. Hidden nets pulled soldiers down. From the rooftops, humans fired carefully aimed shots, striking weak points in Xyrian armor. The desert itself seemed to fight for them. Sandstorms rose suddenly, blinding the enemy. Loose rocks tumbled down from cliffs, crushing machines. The Xyrians had strength, but they lacked patience. The desert punished arrogance. Lyra moved through the chaos like a shadow, directing her people, shouting orders, and helping the wounded. She never paused, never wavered. To the humans, she was not just a leader. She was their strength made flesh. Still, Kale pressed forward. His voice echoed across the battlefield, cold and merciless. Surrender, Lyra. Your humans cannot stand against us. End this before they are destroyed. Lyra stood on a high dune, her cloak whipping in the wind. She shouted back, her voice carrying over the roar of engines. You left me to die in this desert, Kyle. You thought betrayal made you strong, but it only made me stronger. You will never break us. The humans cheered, their spirits lifted even as the battle raged. Night fell, but the fighting did not stop. Fires burned in the distance, lighting the sky in red and orange. The humans retreated deeper into the settlement, forcing the Xyrians into narrow paths where numbers counted for less. Guerrilla tactics slowed Kale's advance, each ambush bleeding his forces. Lyra led a small team on a dangerous mission. While the main fight raged, they slipped behind enemy lines. Their target, Kyle's command vehicle. If they could disable it, chaos would spread among his troops. Moving silently, they crept across the dunes. The vehicle was massive, black metal gleaming under the moonlight. Guards stood watch, but they were tired, distracted by the battle. Lyra gave her signal, and the humans struck. Quick and quiet, they brought the guards down without a sound. Lyra placed a small explosive under the vehicle's engine. The humans pulled back, and with a sharp blast, fire lit the night. Kale's command vehicle was destroyed. Confusion spread instantly through the Xyrian ranks. Soldiers stumbled, unsure of orders. Machines halted, vulnerable. Lyra seized the moment. She shouted to her team, "Now! Press the attack!" The humans surged forward, striking hard. For the first time, the Xyrians faltered. Their perfect discipline cracked, and their arrogance wavered. At dawn, the desert was covered in smoke. Bodies of machines lay broken, and the sand was scarred with battle. Both sides had suffered, but the humans still stood. Lyra stood at the center, weary but unbroken. Kale appeared on the battlefield at last. He strode forward, tall and fierce, his silver eyes burning with rage. His soldiers pulled back, giving him space. This was no longer about armies, it was about him and Lyra. "Enough games," Kale growled, his voice cold. "I gave you life once and I took it away, but you crawled back, clinging to these humans. They will not save you." Lyra's eyes locked with his. She felt the old pain rise, the memory of being abandoned, the sting of betrayal. But she did not flinch. "I don't need saving. I chose my own life. I chose love, loyalty, and courage. You only know betrayal and pride. That is why you will lose." Kale raised his weapon, energy crackling. Lyra did not retreat. She faced him with steady eyes, her blade in hand. Around them, humans and Zyrians paused, watching in silence. Their fight began with a clash of steel and sparks. Kyle was stronger, each strike heavy and powerful. Lyra was faster, moving with precision and grace. She dodged, countered, and struck back, never letting him control the fight. Every move carried memory. When Kale swung recklessly, she remembered the moment he left her in the desert. When she struck his arm, she remembered Joran's kindness and the human's trust. She was not fighting alone. She carried the strength of every human beside her. Kale snarled in frustration. "You were nothing without me." Lyra's blade met his, sparks flying. "I was nothing with you. With humans, I became everything." The duel raged on, sand swirling around them. At last, Lyra saw her chance. Kyle lunged, leaving his side exposed. With a swift strike, she disarmed him. His weapon fell to the sand. She stood over him, breathing hard, her blade poised. Kale glared up, defiant even in defeat. "Do it," he spat. "End me." Lyra's hand trembled, but she did not lower her blade. Instead, she stepped back. Her voice was firm, steady. "No, death is too easy. You will live with your failure. You will live knowing that humans defeated you, that I defeated you." Kyle's face twisted with rage, but he said nothing. His soldiers, seeing their leader beaten, began to retreat. The desert swallowed them, leaving silence behind. The battle was over. Humans stood together, exhausted but triumphant. They had faced Kale's might and survived. More than that, they had won. Lyra looked around at the faces of her people, pride swelling in her chest. She sheathed her blade and turned to Joran, who was waiting nearby, his eyes shining with relief. "It's done," she said softly. He smiled. "No, Lyra, it's only the beginning. Today we proved what humans can do. Tomorrow we build something greater." Lyra lifted her gaze to the horizon where the rising sun painted the sky with gold. She thought of the desert, of betrayal, of survival, and of love. Kale had tried to end her in this wasteland. Instead, the desert had forged her into something unbreakable. A leader, a warrior, a human's wife, and above all, a symbol of hope. As the sun rose higher, Lyra whispered to herself, "This is not revenge anymore. This is justice." And with that, she turned back to her people, ready to lead them into a future where humans no longer bowed to aliens, but stood proudly as equals. The desert was quiet again. The smoke of battle had faded and the winds carried only whispers of shifting sand. For the first time in many years, humans looked across the dunes without fear. They had stood against Kale and they had survived. More than that, they had won. Lyra stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the horizon. The sun rose slowly, spilling gold and crimson light across the land. Her heart was heavy with memories of betrayal, but lighter now with hope. The desert no longer felt like a prison. It was home. Behind her, the humans worked with renewed energy. Where broken walls had stood, new structures were rising. Children carried water, laughing as they splashed each other. Farmers prepared fresh plots of land, using tools and knowledge scavenged from abandoned alien outposts. The settlement was alive, not just surviving, but beginning to thrive. Joran approached, wiping dust from his hands. His smile was warm, his presence steady as always. "The people are rebuilding faster than I imagined," he said. "They believe in tomorrow now, not just in today." Lyra nodded, her silver hair catching the morning light. "That is the greatest victory," she replied softly. "Kale thought betrayal would break me, but it only gave me strength, and that strength became theirs too." Joran placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've become more than a leader. You've become a symbol." Lyra turned her gaze to the settlement. The sight filled her with pride and humility. "Not me alone," she said firmly. "Humans fought beside me. Humans gave me love when Kale left me with nothing. Together we built this." Weeks passed and word of the battle spread across the desert. Travelers, wanderers, and survivors came from distant places to see the humans who had defeated a Zyrian commander. Some came seeking protection, others with hope for trade, and many simply wishing to live free of alien rule. The settlement grew. New tents and houses spread across the dunes, connected by winding paths. Markets opened, filled with goods crafted by human hands. At night, fires lit the sky as music and laughter echoed across the sands. Yet Lyra knew peace was fragile. Kale had retreated, but the Zarian Empire still loomed beyond the desert. His defeat would not go unnoticed. Others might come stronger and more ruthless than him. Humans had won a battle, but the war for freedom was not yet finished. She gathered her council one evening in the meeting hall. Joran, the scouts, the builders, and the young fighters sat around her. Maps and supplies lay on the table. "We cannot wait for the Zyrians to strike again, Lyra,"